The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Welcome back to Blaby again, everybody. Now, there's a sign behind me on a lamppost there that says, "Be aware of pedestrians." And I think it's something to do with the local school around here. But it's kind of important anyway, school or not, because this village has got some tight little narrow lanes. You'll see from the drive-in in a moment just how tight they actually are. This is the beautiful little village of Thurlaston. Thurlaston, Thorleifers Farm. Alright, Blaby people, are you ready for round 2? In the first episode of this series, we didn't really get to see a proper village. Well, today we will. This is Thurlaston, and it's an absolute beauty. Located just over 6 miles away from Leicester, Thurlaston is what I describe as a typical West Leicestershire village. It has so much character and charm, and it's all tied together nicely with a close-knit community that look out for each other. The history of Thurlaston extends back as far as Saxon times. Originally recorded as Thurlaston in the Domesday Book, it was under the ownership of the Viscount of Leicester, Robert de Bussy, from Hugh de Grandmesnil. Later, Robert the Champagne controlled the land under the pretence of a knight's fee, allocated to him by the king. It's believed that Champagne built the present church. Until at least the mid-1830s, agriculture was the main employment here, with 53% of occupants being involved in it. Handcrafts and manufacturing made up the remainder. In the present day, agriculture has dropped off significantly, with just 4% of Thurlaston's residents now involved in it. Today, the prominent occupations are the repair and trade of motor vehicles and the manufacturing industry, which over a quarter of the entire working population is involved in. Thurlaston has steadily grown over time. It hasn't experienced a massive population spike at any point, although it is worth noting that its current population is the highest it's ever been. The village has a school, 2 pubs, a village hall, a playing field and an Evangelical Church, but there's a lot more around it all. Let's go. We start this walk around Thurlaston on Enderby Road, which is in the northern reaches of the main village cluster. It's important not to confuse this place with another Thurlaston in Warwickshire. Although that's not too far away, they are very different places. This pleasant little village, whose main neighbours are Earl Shilton and Huncote, has thankfully been overlooked by major property developers. Since the 1881 census, there have been large changes in occupation of its residents. Agriculture was king out here at one time, but now it's almost non-existent. The village is laid out in what is effectively a square that's missing one of its sides. Luckily, we can complete the 4th side by using the playing field. At the first corner, we have landmark number 1. This is an old forge which has been converted now into what I reckon is Thurlaston's most attractive dwelling. It's certainly a unique feature of this corner, isn't it? Well, I suppose when compared to Leicester Forest West yesterday, this is a bit different, isn't it? There's a lot more buildings to see, a lot more to talk about. The next building to talk about is this one right here. That is the former post office. Thurlaston has no shops, despite the fact its population is large enough to perhaps sustain at least one. It doesn't have a post office either, but it used to. Here we have the old post office, which still retains its old post box in its wall. It's a clue to a bygone time when rural post offices were literally everywhere. Thurlaston does still possess a school, and it's had one since 1833. This school was first established by the rector of Thurlaston, but it wasn't originally here. In 1853, the current building was erected at a cost of £1,000. It was designed to cater for 70 pupils of both sexes. 2 years later, the builders were in again. They would add an infant school to the site, and that allowed for up to 100 pupils, all of whom were receiving free education. Further additions have been made to the buildings over the years. Now the school is a voluntary aided C of E school supported by both the local authority and the Diocese of Leicester. Literally right next door to the school is an open patch of grass which is utilised by the school on sports days when it's turned into a running track. Okay, so I've just perched the camera on this little low wall in front of that green space, and behind me you can see there's a row of houses. If you follow this row, it takes you to that tight corner that you saw in the drive-in. We're about to go around that corner and head up towards the village hall. It's an interesting little building, this one. Now we're at Thurlaston Village Hall, and this is the venue for the village's annual general meeting. That's where committee members meet to discuss the ongoings of the village. Although recently refurbished, the hall is a traditional 1920s building. It currently holds a variety of events and weekly classes such as aerobics and ballroom dancing, as well as children's activities. Thurlaston has a close-knit community which are collectively involved in many things that are unique to the village. Since 1971, for example, these have included the annual Thurlaston Carnival. So, as we said at the start of this walk, Thurlaston is laid out in sort of a square shape. The only thing is that one of the sides is missing. That is to say, there's no street between Desford Road and Earl Shilton Road. That's where the playing field comes in. We can cross that to get between them. The playing field features a small playground and a football pitch, but Thurlaston's main sporting facilities are elsewhere. We'll catch those later. There are two public houses in Thurlaston. One of them stands across the road from the church, which we'll check out in a moment. Built in the 1670s, this one has had a few names in its time, including the Gundog and the Poacher's Brasserie. It most recently was known as Dom. It got that name thanks to its Polish owner. In Polish, Dom means Aga, as in the cooking stove that some of you may have in your homes. At the moment, it's being renovated, and it's changed its name again to the Grey Gosling. Okay, so after turning around at the Grey Gosling, we're now on a footpath which runs all the way up to the school. It bisects the school and that little green space that's right next to it. If you walk up the path though, you're also passing the main entrance to Thurlaston's church. The lit gate is right here, as you can see. So we're going to head on through there and check out the church next. So let's check out the Church of All Saints next, which is rather amazingly the only listed building in the entire village. Can you believe that? This was probably built in the 12th century by the Champagne family, although part of the north aisle was set aside as a burial place for the Turvilles. That's known as the Turville Chantry. The Turvilles came to England with the Normans during the conquest in 1066 and were given several manors in Leicestershire. The monuments in the north aisle consist of a low altar tomb to Hugh Turville, who died in 1340, and his wife. At his feet is a mutilated animal, which is believed to be a dog. The church consists of a nave, a chancel, a tower and that large north aisle. In the 18th century there were major changes to the structure of the building. They included lowering the nave walls and the fitting of a slate roof. There are still remains in the north nave wall of a former rood stair, which is long gone. In 1825, lightning struck the bell tower and a wall, damaging some of the bell frames. In 1876, the old ring of 3 bells were changed to a peal of 5. In the 1840s and the early 1850s, a man called Stephen Fry, no, not the one you're all thinking of, renovated the chancel and the north aisle. In 1861, the chancel arch was rebuilt again. Religiously, Thurlaston has never been a village that's had an array of nonconformists. In fact, the only nonconformists it's ever had were Baptists, who arrived in the late 18th century. They would establish a meeting place in 1788 in what was described as simply a building. Well, there's nothing like being specific. In 1842, they would leave behind whatever building that was and move to this, Thurlaston's Evangelical Free Church on Main Street. This was built at a cost of £250. At the time of the 1851 religious census, it contained room for 300 sittings, 250 of which were free. There has never been a Sunday school here though. So the Grey Gosling might not be called Poacher's Brasserie anymore, but there is still a bit of evidence as to its former name. Outside the chapel here, there's a pole, and on it, you can see, there's a sign that says Poacher's Brasserie. That's not been removed yet, obviously. Now, while we're on the subject of pubs, here's the main one, the Elephant and Castle. Finally, within the village, we come to the other pub. This is the Elephant and Castle, the name of which is believed to be linked to the pub of the same name in London. The name is likely a nod to the Worshipful Company of Cutlers' coat of arms, which features an elephant carrying a castle. That is thought to have inspired the name of a coaching inn. However, some historians argue that Elephant and Castle has always been a common pub name. Perhaps we'll never know, but I do know a bit about this one. This is a traditional Everett's Village pub, offering a warm and friendly welcome to anyone and everyone who walked through its doors. It supported quite a few local events and traditions, such as a pram race that's usually held on Boxing Day. Trust me, that's the stuff of legend around here. That brings the main walk to a close, and all that remains on foot is to head back to Enderby Road. However, that's by no means the end of this episode. If you drive down the Earl Shilton Road away from Thurlaston, it's not long before you arrive at the main sports ground on the left-hand side. The ground is the home of both Thurlaston FC and their respective junior teams, which compete in the local Leicestershire leagues. Not too far away from the ground, there's another sport that this area is known for, although we can't get to its ground. Thurlaston has an archery club within the grounds of a big hall. Remember back at the church we mentioned the name Turville? Well, west of the main Thurlaston village there's a huge parkland which belongs to the township of Normanton Turville. At the centre of the parkland was Normanton Turville Hall, and the history of this place is somewhat obscure. It was anciently the seat of the Turville family, hence the name. For them though, it became at some point of secondary importance, and so not a lot is really known of the house that stood here in their time. It was to be rebuilt by John Rue after he acquired the estate in the early 17th century, although some commentators think it could have been a little earlier. The house was apparently largely unaltered in the later 17th and 18th centuries, although Edward Rue Yeo, who dissipated a large inheritance, is said to have made some improvements. He focused his efforts on the stable block and landscaping the park. The results of that were recorded on early editions of OS maps. Nothing is known of any alterations to the house by the next resident, Hollard Smith, or by the family for which it was an occasional residence until 1850. That family were the Arkwrights, the very same branch of which included the industrialist Richard Arkwright, famous for building quite a few mills across the land. Normanton Turville was the first big landed estate purchase made by Richard Arkwright, in fact. He bought the estate in 1796 for £33,000. His eldest son, Richard Arkwright Jr., lived at the hall in 1810. In 1824, Richard Sr. also bought the 5,500-acre Sutton Scarsdale estate in Derbyshire for the enormous sum of £216,000. Despite the fact that Sutton Scarsdale was a much grander house, he remained at Normanton as well, and continued to live here until his death in 1832. The house was given a new porch and a central gable, as well as a rather crude semi-timbered cladding in the 1870s. This was likely done by Colonel Richard Worsley Worswick after he inherited the estate. He was also responsible for the addition of a Roman Catholic chapel at the rear of the house, which survived after the house itself was pulled down. In 1912, Normanton Hall was the seat of Major William Worsley Worswick, a Justice of the Peace. He would lose his son, Basil, in World War I during the Irish Easter Rebellion. The house was unoccupied during that war, and the estate was put up for sale in 1921. It was finally demolished in 1928, apparently after a fire had damaged the building. And so today, all that remains is the parkland and a few ancillary buildings. The archery club is within the parkland, along with an airgun club and a fishery to the south of the estate. Now, to get back to the village, my original plan was to use a road called Watery Gate Lane, and the reason behind that name is about to become very apparent. On Watery Gate Lane, there's the most picturesque little ford, which crosses the road. Don't be fooled by its prettiness though, because this can be a bit of a nightmare in the winter. In December of 2020, a set of gates were installed next to the ford to stop traffic from using the road when the stream becomes flooded. It might not look like it floods right now, but it's the summertime. When the rains come, this is virtually impassable. In fact, it was recently named as the second worst place in the UK for motorists to get stuck in floodwater. The gates cost some £65,000, and they seem to have been worth that price tag. Between 2014 and 2018, fire and rescue services were called out 10 times to assist stricken vehicles right here. In the summer though, this is an absolute delight. Generations of Thurlaston children have used this ford as a makeshift paddling pool, a place to cool off in the long hot summers of yesteryear. So my plan was to drive through this ford, but it's a bit too deep, so I'm not going to attempt it. I know a man who is though. You might recognise this guy.
Hello everybody.
That is Ben Gredgers, who you may remember from the Rufford episode I mentioned.
Yep, you might recognise me from the Rufford Ford days. I'm down at a different ford though today, Watery Gate Lane, as I'm sure Andy's probably explaining to you. But it is quite deep today. I thought you were going to go through for a minute there, but I saw you stop and I thought, oh no.
But you're about to.
Yeah, I can go through for you. I can give you a demonstration of how it's done.
Absolutely, yep. Please do.
No worries.
Please do. Well, I never expected that. A little bit of an unexpected collaboration. He's coming back through again. Yeah, way too deep for me to attempt in my car, but he's got obviously a 4x4, so it's much easier for him. Apparently he's here today to catch some victims of the Ford. I'm not going to be one of them. After turning around and making my way back to the village, next we have the Thurlaston Garden Centre and Tea Room. It's a family-run business which offers a wide variety of plants, gardening supplies and a shop with gifts and clothing. As the name suggests, it also features a tea room called the Gardener's Rest, as well as a children's play area too. After a short trip through the village, next we're heading towards the next one. On the right, after the road has bent eastwards, you'll see an industrial building. That's Thurlaston's Sawmill. I couldn't find a lot about it, but I imagine they cut a lot of wood here. Just beyond this is our final landmark. It's another sports ground, but it doesn't belong to Thurlaston, even though the site of it is still firmly within the parish boundaries. As we'll learn tomorrow, sport in the village of Huncote is a rather important thing. Huncote has several facilities including a leisure centre, but their main sports teams play here. This is the Huncote Sports and Social Club, which is where the village's football team, Burbage and Huncote FC, play their home games. They're members of the Leicester and District League and were formerly members of the Leicestershire Senior League. The club have a Football Foundation standard clubhouse and share their facilities with Huncote Cricket Club. The clubhouse was built in 2004 to replace a much older pavilion. It can boast 4 changing rooms, a bar and a function room to cater for up to 100 guests. The cricket club run 2 teams in the Leicestershire and Rutland Cricket League and also field a Sunday friendly 11 in order to develop the younger players at the club. And that will do us for Thurlaston. I'm starting to enjoy my trips to Leicestershire more and more, and it's villages like this one that keep me coming back. We still have 3 more Blaby villages to see this week. Tomorrow we're off to one that's rather awkwardly laid out, but has ample to talk about. See you down the road. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.